Hello, welcome to this British Business Bank webinar. I'm really glad you could join us. My name's Christian Doherty. I'm a business journalist. I've been writing about the issues facing SMEs now for 15 years. So it's fitting that today's theme is building business resilience. And resilience is one of those words I think that means different things to different people. So today we'll be looking at a whole range of issues, from securing finance, controlling your costs, dealing with suppliers, looking after yourself as well as you grow your business in what are, very tough times. So to pick through those topics, I'm very pleased to be joined by a fantastic panel today. So first we have Sarah Gardner. Now, Sarah is the UK Network Strategy and Insights Director for the British Business Bank. She's been a senior leader in financial services for over 25 years and is a qualified banker and is an associate of the London Institute of Banking and Finance. So safe to say she knows her way around the banking industry. Then we have Kelly Dunn. Now, Kelly runs KD Recruitment. She's based up in Scarborough, and she's turned KD into one of the region's fastest growing recruitment agencies, which isn't bad considering the pandemic that she's had to deal with. Our third panelist is Alison North. And now Alison wears many hats, but for today's event, she's here in her capacity as a business consultant who works with a range of growing businesses. She's also deputy chair at SWLEP Limited, as well as being a board director of the FSB, of the Federation of Small Businesses. So she brings a whole wealth of experience and perspective to a range of issues. And last but not least, we have Hannah Saunders. Now, Hannah's the founder and director of the natural skincare brand Toddleborn Wild. So she spotted a gap in the market, and when she left the RAF in 2017, she spent the next 18 months doing market research and developing a whole range of natural skincare products for youngsters. And if you recognize Hannah, it might be because she was recently successful in her pitch on Dragon's Den. So it's a fantastic, recent, really impressive panel. So let's crack on. Before we do, I'd just like to offer up a poll. I'd like to get a sense of people's, I guess, level of confidence. So as you can see, there should be a poll question up there now, which is, what phrase best describes your current business forecast? Would you say you are confident and expecting to grow? Are you somewhere in the middle, neutral, kind of expecting to maintain your position? Or are you concerned? Are you more focused on survival and just getting through the next sort of 12 months? I'll leave that poll open for a little while. And what we'll do first is we'll jump straight in. And I want to go to Sarah first from the British Business Bank. And it would be great, Sarah, to if you could give us a bit of an overview of those key challenges that are facing smaller businesses in the UK at the moment. What's your kind of overall impression of where we are?
Thanks, Christian. Well, I think it's fair to say it continues to be very challenging out there for small businesses. You've got the high inflation, rise in energy costs, rise in interest rate environment now to deal with inflation. Whilst the pandemic, the lockdown's been released and, people are moving about and doing things, I think it would be unfair to say, the businesses themselves haven't suffered damage as a result of the pandemic. And there are still some ongoing issues as they try to rebuild, repair themselves, particularly in certain sectors. And then obviously the one of the key themes that comes up in the intel that my team gather from UK Network is there is still a lack of knowledge and awareness of finance products that are available, and what they should do and where they should turn to actually look to raise finance if they need it to grow or to repair or build their businesses going forwards. And the other main thing that still comes across is probably partly to do with the Brexit, that there are some businesses that are still struggling to access the right skills and talent for their businesses. So I think really, the things that stand out are the economy, which continues to be extremely challenging, and then the lack of awareness of the products and things that are out there to support businesses are the key things I'd call out.
Great. Okay. Well, let's dive right in then and sort of let's go to the coalface then with our business owners here. I mean, Kelly, Sarah's talked about there some of the really sort of key issues there: costs, finding the right talent, finance. How would you describe your current situation? What are your big challenges?
I think I would agree with probably all of that. Certainly costs are going up. Obviously, the minimum wage or national living wage increase that affects everybody as of this month is a big thing. On the East Coast, it's an area of deprivation. So a lot of roles are kind of minimum wage roles. So from businesses across the area, they're all struggling because they've suddenly had a hike in payroll costs. But that's not even just at entry level. You know, if you've got people who were previously on £9 something an hour have now got to go to £10.42, but then your mid-level people were on about £10.50, £11 an hour. You've got to put their payroll up as well. So wage costs across the board in this area in North Yorkshire have massively been hit for a lot of businesses. I'm speaking to a lot of clients who are struggling with their energy costs. You know, all the energy providers are just hiking up them costs. And then I absolutely agree from a recruiter's perspective, the skills and talent shortages. It's a big question I get asked every day is we've got loads of vacancies and we can't find the talent. Obviously, that's where I come in as a recruiter. But it is, we're currently facing one of the lowest unemployment rates that we've had in a very long time across the UK. Yorkshire's always got the lowest unemployment rate, weirdly. But yeah, it's about 3.4% at the moment. So, you know, it's really, really low. And the best people are in jobs, and businesses have to try and ascertain what sets them apart from the competition. Why does somebody come and work for them rather than stay where they are?
Yeah, that makes sense. What about you, Hannah? I mean, your business is, I suppose, I guess, a bit more reliant on raw materials, energy as well. I mean, what's keeping you awake at night?
Yeah, so I echo everything that's just been said. You know, cost of goods is up. The living wage, whilst being fantastic, affects the bottom line. Inflation affects the bottom line, the P&L, and then that then has a knock-on effect that the appetite at the moment for investors has been quite low. And I've seen some stats and some figures just recently that this is one of the worst years. We saw some really nice growth across sort of VC firms and what they're doing in terms of their seed investment, especially. And people just aren't investing at the moment. So that's having a real impact, especially on emerging businesses in the sustainability space, especially where things are a bit more innovative and they are taking a bit more of a punt because it's not been proven. So that I would say that if anyone out there is struggling to get investment at the moment, that's happening across the board. You're not unusual. I think for us, we've shopped around quite carefully for our suppliers. We've brought things in-house to actually bring cost of goods down. We've brought things from other countries to the UK because shipping costs and fuel and stuff is so high. So actually our cost of goods at the moment it's not affecting us too much, and we're trying to keep our prices the same for our customers, and we haven't really raised them over the last 3 years, apart from on 2 products. So I would say to anyone out there that is finding it tough, shop around, have good relationships with your suppliers. Maybe you can do installments or things like that, so you can get higher volume so that you get that unit price down. Also, we've stopped using agencies. We've brought people in-house or freelance because agencies charge a premium. We've looked to get rid of subscriptions that we didn't really need, and we've looked to strip out everything that we don't need. And what I would say is just review your costs. Sometimes I've got my head down, I'm running the business. Monthly, take a big step back, maybe an afternoon, review all of your costs. What can you get rid of? And in your personal life as well, do you need Netflix? Do you need Amazon Prime? Do you need Apple TV? And then get external advice. I had external advice about my P&L and things that I could strip out and ways we could drive efficiencies through the business. So yeah, my advice there is just keep reviewing and lean on other people as well.
So Alison, I mean, it's interesting because you've got a wealth of experience working with all sorts of different businesses. Many of them have been through tough times. Does the experience that you're hearing here, particularly from these 2 business owners, does that chime with what you're hearing at the moment? And does that particular sort of laser-like focus that Hannah's there talking about on costs, does that chime with your kind of advice to your, to the people that you're working with?
Yeah, I echo again, echo again the thing that Kelly and Hannah and Sarah are saying, really. I mean, the domestic economy is the thing which everybody's talking about, and it's the one that everybody fears. But on the good side, if you like, the 44.5% roughly of businesses are in growth. So we are seeing some things coming through, which is good. So yes, costs are definitely an issue on everybody's radar. I think though the challenge with that is that because that's all we hear about. So to go back to Kelly's comment about things like skills and talent, it's not just skills and talent, it's actually lack of people too. So it's in the hospitality trade, you know, where do you find those people? What do you pay them? You know, you're having to pay over the odds for these people to steal them almost from your neighbour's pub or your neighbour's restaurant because you haven't got that pay. And they're closing down services. So hotels are closing down services, spas and swimming pools, because they don't have the staff and they don't have the spare cash to fix it. Those sort of things are eventually going to begin to impact on us more as people who, you know, living and traveling around the UK, that sort of thing. So I think, yes, I agree with what things are saying, and also Hannah's tips, absolutely. I think one of the things that I find is that there's a panic. Sometimes the business, the owner goes, oh, I've got to do something. And they also think they have to do it on their own. And they're not aware of the financial products. And that's partly because even I don't know exactly what financial products are out there. No longer can I go and just ask one source. There are multiple sources to ask. And are they bona fide? Is this the right source to go to? You know, do you go to a growth hub? Do you go to the Federation of Small Businesses, for example? Do you go to a bank? Are they biased? Are they going to just push you down to, you know, their favorite person? And is that the right person? It's a very difficult market to go through. So going out and again, Hannah, something I did the minute I started my business, I employed an accountant because frankly, I knew nothing about finance. If you don't have a good financial person with you that you can turn to and trust, it's a very difficult thing to get through this. Absolutely. I mean, that's a good segue into asking Sarah there about the general state of, in terms of the financial landscape. There is that sense, as Alison said there, about a sense sometimes that businesses are on their own and they can't really, they're not sure where to turn. The British Business Bank does have that role and does have that important kind of unique mandate, if you like. What, just in terms of the work that you do with out there in the country, how would you describe the level of understanding among, particularly under small businesses, about the sorts of things that are on offer for them? I mean, does that need to improve, do you think? Yeah, we fundamentally, it definitely does need to improve. I mean, we have UK Network, which is the team I'm in as the Insights and Strategy Director. We have people based across all the 12 different regions and nations, and we are talking, we have roughly around 4,000 contacts, and they're very, very broad contacts, you know, out there listening to what they're hearing on the ground. And constantly, you know, that lack of awareness of the finance products that are out there is something. You know, we would definitely, and I would definitely echo both Hannah and Alison's comments about get a local accountant or somebody there in your region or on your patch that can help you and sit alongside you and does have that knowledge to find products and services that are out there that are going to help the business. You know, you come into myself or and we can point people in the right direction as to who the representative is in the Northwest or across the devolved nations or down in the Cornwall and the Southwest. You know, we have people based across the country, and you know, we are doing our very best, and we'll be continuing to do it this year, of how do we raise the awareness and try and lead people by the hand and put them in touch with the right people. You know, I think it's critical to get a really strong support network around you and peers, you know, that are in your patch or, you know, across different areas of the country that might be able to share some of their skills, knowledge, and you know, what they've learned along the way. I think that's very, very important for small businesses as well. Those case studies and having contacts that you can reach out to and say, you know, I'm struggling with this at the minute, what would you advise me to do? I think it's very, very important in this backdrop. Absolutely. I mean, if I could go to Kelly then, because I know that you had a really tough time, obviously, with the pandemic. So many things sort of shut. We all did, but I know, you know, really sort of hit you where it hurts. Am I right in thinking that you had to sort of really kind of adapt and pivot your business a bit when the pandemic hit? I'm interested to find out, because that's an example of like resilience. It's tough. What do we do? Can you give us a bit of an insight into what you did?
Yeah. So when the pandemic hit, we set up our business in 2017, or I set the business up in 2017. And in February 2020, I just hired my second member of staff, gone through training with her. And my plan was, I'm hiring this person so I can take a break. I hadn't had a holiday for however many years, and I'd worked every hour that God sends. And my priority was, I need to get this person up and running. We're going to do this together. I want to take a week off. And obviously in March 2020, the pandemic hit, and I turned up to work on a Monday, and my diary just completely emptied. All my meetings were cancelled. Every job that we were recruiting for was put on hold or was cancelled. I had people due to start jobs that were withdrawn. Genuinely, I got to the Friday and sent my staff home and went, I don't know if you're going to have jobs in the future. I don't know what the future holds. We were very lucky that the furlough scheme was brought in by Rishi, and I managed to furlough the team, and they obviously were very grateful. So they were furloughed, they went home, and I was back at home on my own with a laptop going, I don't know what to do next, because nobody was recruiting. So I had to sit and think about, what do we do to make this business survive? And that's when I started speaking to business owners and having really honest and frank conversations about, you know, what are you doing? How are you struggling? And found that we were all in this together and we all had similar stories. I started pointing people in the direction of, actually, this is where you go to find out about the furlough scheme. So pointing them into the right links, sharing knowledge, sharing information about kind of COVID strategies and what you can do to make your business COVID safe. But more importantly, actually, a lot of the well-being and the mental health support that they needed, not just for themselves, but for their staff, and checking in with them. And actually, what should you be doing to keep your staff engaged? Because these were all things I was hearing and listening to. And then I started doing that with my team. But then I sat there and there were businesses that were really struggling. So I diversified and said, right, okay, so if you're not recruiting, what we're going to do is offer outplacement and redundancy support. So those people that needed to restructure, we could support their staff on that journey out of the business. So it's a positive one, but also looking at what they would do next. And actually, when we're in a recession environment, so as much as we weren't in a recession at that point, there wasn't many permanent roles available. You have to look at what will happen next. And what happens next, because I've seen it in the 2008 recession, is that temporary jobs come first. So at the time, we only recruited for permanent roles. So I then went, right, okay, so looking at what's happened in the past is that the temporary market is going to recover quicker than the permanent market. So I brought in temporary solutions and had to look at how we were going to deal with things like timesheets and payroll and, you know, all of that kind of costs and innovation and technology that was needed. So the outplacement support and the temporary solutions kind of came hand in hand as part of that, so that we could then arm ourselves ready for the market changing. So we were able to work with businesses on strategies and looking at, right, okay, so this is where you are now, but actually, where are you going to be in a month's time? Where do you want to be? And how can we support you in that? And I started doing a lot of the consultancy and advice with them as well. So I created my own COVID report. I started having a lot of regular one-to-ones with business owners about the strategy of their business and actually what retention strategies have they got? Because as we saw the market recovering, people started moving and changing jobs again. It's like, oh, actually, hang on a minute. How do you keep hold of these people? So as a result of the pandemic, we came out as resourcing strategists as opposed to a recruitment agency. And we completely pivoted, and we still do the recruitment. And actually, the recruitment is more successful now because of the pandemic and how we diversified and how we altered our model very, very quickly and saw the gaps that we needed to be there to support businesses. And those businesses that we supported have stayed with us, and we are now partners with them because it's a support mechanism. It's not just we're a means to an end because we're there to fill a job. We actually do so much more than that, and that's how we diversified. Yeah,
it's interesting you say that there, because I wanted to ask Alison about that, because I know you're quite passionate, Alison, about this idea of pivoting and being flexible and agile. I mean, because it's difficult. There's a bit, you know, there will be businesses sitting there thinking, should I stick to my knitting? Should I be doing something different? What's your take on it?
Well, yeah, you're right. I am very passionate about being flexible. I think if you go back, and bear with me, I go back to 1986 when I set up the company, which I then sold in 2011. we had to change every time something came along, and we went through a couple of bad situations with, money was tight. There was Black Monday. There was all this stuff going on. If you look through history, you'll see there's quite a few things have gone on since '86 in terms of businesses. But what we tended to do, we were a service company, an archive company. It was the file management paper. What we did was we just kept changing what we did. We made it better. We made the processes better. We made the product better. We introduced firsts all the time, just kept looking forward to the future and offering what we believe the companies need. In those days, I was dealing with massive organizations. But to get back to today, and what really happened to me and what really sort of brought it home to me was I was acting as a consultant in my field. So information, data analytics, data integration, all of those things. What I realized at the beginning of the pandemic, actually, that's not who I am. I'm a business owner. And so at the beginning of the pandemic, I looked at my client list, and they postponed all of the work because it was all abroad, it was face-to-face, it was, nothing going on. And so I said, okay, I know I've got that to come back to. Can I afford to give away all my time free of charge to the businesses and use my experience as a business owner to help people get through? And luckily, with being on the board of the Federation of Small Businesses, they were massively behind all of this too. So really, it was a case of learning to do something without payment almost through that time, and checking that I had enough money to be able to do that, which luckily I did. And then it's turned into my business now. So now this is all I do. I do some data work, but most of the time I'm just helping small businesses. So it's that ability to really sit back and say, can I do this? Now, I know I'm a lot older than a lot of people in business, and I've had a business before, sold it, and gone on to do something of my own. Not everybody has the luxury of being able to not take payment. But what it has done is it's brought sponsors to me. It's brought people to me who've said, look, we'll help you do this if you can, and without any requirement for me to sell their products or anything, just people who want to help but don't know how to help. So helping business is really that side of things now they're doing. That flexibility, that knowing about yourself and knowing about what you can give back and try and help people with is really important. And understanding your skill set as a business owner, it's not just about the product or the service you have, it's about a lot of things. And that agility comes from understanding that not just you, but your team also has other talents, and that you can actually use those to good effect for all of you to move forward and be more agile. So it's getting that agility from your team as well as from yourselves.
Fantastic. What about you, Hannah? Because I mean, it's still a very young business, and it obviously caught the eye of the dragons, and it's an innovative business. I mean, where are you now in terms of your kind of ability to, or willingness to flex? I mean, have you had to do that yet? Are you still the same business now that you were when you started, and where do you see it going?
Yeah, so I really, really can resonate with what Alison has just said there. I was in the armed forces where there's this phrase that no plan survives first contact, no plan survives that first gunshot being fired. So I'm quite used to living in ambiguity. We've got no budget, we've got no people, but do this thing. So I'm quite comfortable with trying to be innovative without particularly knowing it until I had to because of the pandemic, as Kelly so articulately put there. And I think what came out of the last two speakers really is that it's been a good thing, because I went into the pandemic thinking I'm business to business. We're not going to be D2C, direct to consumer. So I was going to trade shows. I was doing that account management piece, relationship building, what have you, lots of LinkedIn and emailing and, that sort of activity. That all died. I think we lost about 60 different fairly warm export and retail leads in about 48 hours. And I was staring at having no company. So we quickly upskilled, put ourselves on lots of different channels, Amazon USA, Amazon UK. We're exporting B2B, we're distributing internationally. And the more channels you've got, the more resilient you make yourself for the future. Now, channels will be aligned to certain different business models. And if you're a hairdresser, maybe you can't do Amazon USA. But there's always ways to diversify and make yourself more resilient for the future. So I think the positive thing for businesses out of the pandemic is that we are more resilient. And as Alison said, there's always something. There's the next recession, there's the next war, there's the next energy crisis. And by building in all these different channels, it just makes us so much more resilient. And another positive is for us, we make products. And so we make products, hopefully, that sell. If they don't sell, we stop selling them, or we are constantly sort of doing reiterations of our products. And one of the good things from the pandemic is we sold a hand sanitizer. We came out at the end of the pandemic, we sold 3 different hand sanitizers that do different things, and they all sell really well. So just being able to come back from, okay, that's what the business did look like, and that's what I had planned. And honestly, my business looks so different to how it started in the beginning. I was going to start a baby lip balm business, and I won't even tell you the names, it's so embarrassing. And now we've got a range of many different products, and it looks so incredibly different. So I think the one thing is just expect loads of change, and if you're comfortable with change, you'll probably thrive in business.
Is that, Sarah, is that what you like to hear from businesses? I mean, from a banking perspective, because I know that there sometimes is there's a fear among businesses that of how to communicate with their bank and what they should be asking. And is it a good thing that we've changed tack and our business plan from 12 months ago is now completely changed? I mean, what's the general kind of banking view on the ability to sort of change and to pivot in tough times?
I think it's vital, when you put a business plan forward, or you're looking for any type of funding, they want to see that you've thought it thoroughly through. The banks know, we are hit by many things. There's been the financial crisis, so they're always thinking about, well, what happens, and they build that into criteria when you're applying for finance. So they need to know that you can adapt or pivot, or you're not just out there doing one thing, and if something takes you off course, that then would make the loan, or the funding they've given, more exposed to potential. So they want to hear that. They want to see the business plan being brought to life, and that they can see where it's going, that you've thought about what that competitive landscape looks like, where you fit within the competitive landscape, who are you competing with, do you fully understand that, what could you do if will the business survive if interest rates go up another 2 or 3%? So those are all things that businesses need to demonstrate to the banks when you're looking for any sort of funding. Is make sure, as I've said, that you get somebody alongside you if you've not got the financial knowledge and expertise that can advise you on how to put your business plan together, how to put a cash flow forecast together to show that you can survive more difficult circumstances, and that's factored in to your plans, and that you are resilient and you are committed to what you're doing. They'll want to look at the team that's around the business, and the knowledge and skills, that you're not just reliant on one particular individual. There are other people in the business that are able to do that, and they're not exposed to a key person. That's vital as well. So just thinking all of those things through, it's not just the financials when a bank's looking at it. Yes, they're key and they like to see the trading history, but they want to see, where is this going? Have you considered where you are on the competitive landscape? What's the USP of this business? what are they trying to do? And they will have limits to certain sectors as well, so they will be looking at, and obviously they're more nervous around some of the sectors that are being hit at the moment with less disposable income, like leisure, hospitality, things like that. They become more nervous. But what you can see from our small business finance market report is, interestingly, and the numbers are quite staggering, the challenger banks and the challenger financial institutions are coming through over the major high street lenders. So £35 billion worth of lending from challenger banks. There are banks out there and financial institutions that are looking to do interesting type things in niche markets. So again, I would stress about, get somebody alongside you, a financial intermediary, an accountant. You may not know where to go, but they should be able to go out there and think, who's out there that can help a business? Because one strong thing that's coming through at the minute with the backdrop is there is a requirement for working capital or cash, because you don't always get paid quickly in a lot of businesses for your product. So in that interim period, they need some form of cash. So there are products out there like invoice finance, where you've got invoices out there waiting to be paid. But you just need to find somebody out there within your patch or within your local area that can help you connect with those people that are able to help you and point you in the right direction to make sure that you get that support.
And I guess lots of that comes down to confidence, doesn't it? I mean, there's a sense. It's interesting there, because we did our poll and we said, and how confident are people, and actually nobody is concerned. We've got 70% of people are fairly neutral, and 30% are pretty confident, and and they're expecting to grow. I mean, Hannah, what do you think about that idea about confidence? Because it's easy sometimes to maybe talk things down a little bit. I mean, you've got to be realistic, but I mean, you know, do you think it's important to sort of keep those confidence levels up, to keep people G'd up, and to not perhaps get a little bit too kind of bogged down in the bad news?
I think if you're driving a company forwards and you get too pessimistic, then where's everyone else going to go? I'm naturally quite an optimistic person, and I think being optimistic, I mean, this is about resilience, is part of my resilience. I had an interesting childhood, which was a bit tough, and joined the armed forces. So I've sort of got a bit of a perspective of what's the worst that can happen. I try my absolute best. I am realistic. Having run this company for 4 years now, I know, you know, what can and can't happen, and I know my limits. But we are seeing nice growth, and I don't think there's much use getting bogged down in global issues. I think you really need to concentrate on what the art of the possible. So what can you do with your team today, this week, this month, this quarter? There's always room for growth. I would say if you're going to fail fast. So, you know, for us, our NPD cycle is quite short. Our new product development cycle is short. So get the product out there, get the MVP out there, their minimum viable product, get it in the market. Does it sell? No, right, next. Just keep reiterating. So Stephen Bartlett talks about this really eloquently in his podcast, and I saw him a couple of weeks ago, and he really sort of champions that failure is so brilliant. So yeah, I think there's a bit of a contradiction there, but I am optimistic. Let's try it. Let's go for it. And I think if you're running a business, even if you don't always feel like it, fake it till you make it. Try and be that optimistic person to take the team with you. Stay away from news.
What about you, Kelly? You know, because you've obviously you've carried that business on your back in a way, you know, as everybody does. I mean, what's your sort of how do you keep yourself kind of confident and keep everyone else around you? I mean, are you naturally sort of fairly confident, or have you had to find yourself kind of digging deeper into to sort of really keep things going?
Yeah, the digging deep. I think you don't know how strong you are until you're pushed to the limit. You know, I would say the pandemic hit hard because you don't go into a business thinking it's just going to be you on your own forever. Or I didn't, you know. I'd worked for global companies before. I'd worked in the corporate world my whole life. And I set up my business not to become global or corporate, but to try and do things differently. But I had this vision in my head of, I'm going to bring people in and I'm going to empower them to be the best that they can be. And we're all going to be in this together. And I had a vision, and, you know, they joined me and they were on that journey with me. And suddenly it all went wrong. And what I thought was going to happen obviously had to stop, and we had to completely change. And so you dig deep and I have realized that actually the people around me are motivated and positive when I am. And if I'm struggling, I've seen that they struggle. So yes, you really, really have to dig deep and make sure that you keep them motivated to enable that kind of vision to get back on track. You know, and then it is really, really tough because also as a business owner, you have your personal life. And I've had a lot of personal struggles over the last few years as well with losing people. But the business still has to continue, and that world's still revolving, and we still have an exceptional service that we want to deliver. And I've got this amazing team that without them, we wouldn't be anywhere. But I want to make sure that they know that they're amazing and that they keep motivated and that confidence is still there and that they still know what our vision is and where we're going and what's going on. And, you know, they're brilliant. They absolutely are brilliant. But you do get up some days and go, how do I do this? And you have to work really, really hard to walk into that office on that Monday morning and go, come on, guys, let's do it.
It's interesting there. I mean, Alison, Kelly mentions the word vision there. And I think there's a sense sometimes where people think vision in a time like this, we just need to sort of batten down the hatches. And I mean, how important is it, do you think, to sort of keep your eyes on the prize and sort of keep retain that inner belief and that vision on the bigger picture there?
Yeah, so I'm a great dreamer. I think I was accused as a child at school. I just stopped looking out of the window and dreaming. Why that was wrong, but it was back in the 60s, it was wrong to dream out of a window. But it is, you know, to me, it is about your vision where you're going thing about a vision, though, for me is that you can change it. So it doesn't have to stay the same vision, because sometimes going towards the same vision actually is the wrong thing to do. And I am very much an optimist. I am just the person who is always optimistic in the family, in life generally. Nobody ever sees me anything other than optimistic. And I think the only person who really has sussed I'm not as optimistic as I make out sometimes is my youngest daughter, who's similar. So, you know, it's just that the optimism rules. But the problem about that is, and the challenge about that is not a problem, is that your people, yes, they reflect what you're like, and you've got to be upbeat, you've got to be positive. But sometimes a pessimist in the business is quite good, because a pessimist actually gives you a different take on things. And sometimes when you fail, and I failed many times, that failure, it never fazed me because I'm an optimist, but the pessimist would come along and give me almost light at the end of the tunnel by explaining why it was a failure. A bit like I told you so, but not quite. But it was a good thing to have. It was a good story to tell me. And the team was very important in that. So you have to be aware, and you have to be aware of fake optimists too. So there are a number of people who mirror what you're looking like, and they're not really optimistic at all. They're just mirroring you, and behind it all they're absolutely terrified. And as a business owner, your responsibility is to understand these different types of people you've got working with you, or else the company depends on that. And if you don't get that right, that's another area that the company doesn't do quite so well in. So yes, I've forgotten your original question now, Christian. I've gone off on one, but optimism is very definitely the right thing to do. And certainly it worked very well for me in the past.
And I guess the other thing there that comes through from everyone that's sort of spoken is this in terms of the support around you, also the idea of delegation and actually letting people, you know, empowering people, giving them. I mean, Alison, what's your take on that? Because I know you've worked with lots of different businesses, and you often sort of hammer that home a bit, don't you? Yeah.
So the one thing that I did very early on in my business was not to be the face of the business. Oh yes, I was the face of the business, but I owned the business. Everybody knew that. But it was the team that were the business, the team that delivered, the team that did everything. And so I made sure that they were front and center, because they were the clever ones. They were the ones doing the work. I was just the person running the business, because I think that was really very important, to delegate that authority, to give them. There was no such a word as entrepreneurship in 1986, but I think that's what we were doing. We were giving the opportunity for the team to actually come up with ideas, come up with that new product, new service. Nothing was wrong. Everything was part of the team, and the team were delegated to do that. Sometimes they were delegated possibly with a little bit too much enthusiasm from me, and they had to learn a little bit, which was hard on the job. But I learned along the way as well. And that's the other thing about being a business owner. No matter what age you set up a business, it's not the same as being an employee. And so you have to learn from the outset. You're learning at the same time as you're building the business, and you make mistakes, and mistakes can lead to failure, as I mentioned earlier. So, it's just that moving forward with a team that you trust and can work with, and they trust you, and you become a family. I mean, we grew to about 50 people, which is not huge. It was still enough to get the people across the business to know who I was, and that we were all part of the same team. Yeah, it's interesting there from a banking perspective then, Sarah. I guess that's what you want to see, isn't it? Business leaders who can effectively delegate, who can develop people, and so they're not completely reliant on that one individual, every sort of hoarding the power and all of that knowledge. I mean, is that quite reassuring when you see that? Yeah, that's exactly the point that I was getting across, is, they want to see that you've got that team and that you can delegate, and if one person isn't available, that there are other people in this team that have got the skills and experience and can step forward to do things. That gives banks a lot of confidence if they can see that it's a strong team, not just one individual. Absolutely. Okay. Well, I'm conscious that we're heading towards the end, but what I wanted to do as a kind of a wrap up was to talk about a little bit about well-being, which is, it's all very well with, we talk about, getting the finances right and everything else, but actually we need to look after ourselves as well. So I was keen to get maybe a tip from each of you about what you've learned over the last couple of years, and the thing that you do now to, when times get tough, or when you've had a bad day or a bad month, or however long it may take. Maybe if I start with Kelly, maybe what do you do in those tough times? What's your kind of personal kind of well-being routine, if you like?
I think it's important to identify when you're struggling. That's the first thing, because I think a lot of people don't realise that they're struggling, and understanding that it's okay not to be okay. You know, not everybody is amazing and happy and, you know, living their best life every single day. It's important to realise that tomorrow's another day. So if you are struggling today, tomorrow's going to be okay. Tomorrow is a new day. You can have a fresh start tomorrow. But if I feel like I'm in that moment, it's taking time for myself. You know, I have a very busy life. I'm married. I've got children, pets. I run a company. I've got a lot of people in my life that depend on me. And sometimes you need to get off the train and just stop and take a moment for yourself. So I like to take my dog for a walk. We live in the countryside. So, you know, walking through the fields, especially on days like today, when it's glorious. So taking time out, I like to put my music on. I'm a massive fan of music. So I have the music on really loud and I walk the dog and thinking about something else that is nothing to do with whatever's going on in your life or whatever is, you know, making you feel like that. And also listening to inspirational podcasts. So actually Stephen Bartlett is one of the ones that I do like to listen to. Fern Cotton, she does some really, really good inspirational podcasts. So, you know, for me, it's actually making my brain think of something else. That's the key thing, is think about something else, but take that time for yourself where you've not got people at you all the time, and just take a moment. And if that's 10 minutes or it's a day, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, brilliant. So if anyone sees any a woman walking along the beach in Scarborough with headphones in and a big smile on her face, then it's probably going to be Kelly. What about you, Alison? What do? You've learned from experience. What's your tip?
Well, the interesting thing, of course, is that, again, and I'm sorry to go back on the age thing, but going back as I've done, you know, being born in the 1950 actually, and then growing through an era where it was, you know, pull up your big girl pants or whatever, although they didn't talk about that in those days, but, you know, it was just a case of get on with it. I got on with it, and I didn't really think too much when I was running a business in the early days. I really didn't think much about what I should do for me ever. Luckily, I am physically and mentally resilient, and so I got through this on my own steam. Thinking about it in today's world and looking back and saying, okay, menopause was dreadful, you know, I was moody. My poor staff, honestly, my poor team, they must have thought I was mad, but they got through it with me, so it wasn't that mad. But nothing about myself. Nowadays, completely different. I took up ultra running. In fact, I took up running when I was 64, and I love that. I go ultra marathon, straight into ultra marathons. Nothing short for me. I don't like the short distances. Up in the hills, across the dales. You know, it's the most wonderful, relaxing time spent in the open. Doesn't matter what the weather's like. For me, that's where I get my rest and respite. And I've got two grandsons actually, so they're also quite good for relieving stress, plus the dogs and the cat and everything else. And my husband's quite good too, actually. So I think generally my family life now is the thing which helps me. But again, because I've grown up in a world without any well-being really given any credence, I don't think about it quite so much. And I do accept that it's necessary, but it's not on my radar. I don't think about it in terms of myself quite so much. But I suppose it's my running that gives me the thing, doing what I want to do basically now.
Well, if you don't mind, I'll join Kelly on the dog walk if it's all right, and I'll let you do the run. If that's all right.
The dogs run with me, actually, Christian.
Oh, well, there you go. What about you, Sarah? It's tough at the top there at the bank.
I'm gonna go with Alison, that I'm a big runner, and I love running to get out and clear my head. But I did something in the pandemic because people were getting very nervous about runners outside in my local village. So I bought the Peloton tread, and it's absolutely incredible. The community on Peloton, you know, during lockdown, just the friendships that I got, you know, and it's cheaper than a gym membership because you could do it on the interest free. Got the treads, cleared some space, and yeah, music. They do the music classes, so. You know, I grew up and was out partying in the 80s, so they do a lot of 80s classes of running that takes me back to when I was younger. And yeah, just that sense of community, friendship, exercise. I'm a huge believer in any form of exercise helps your state of mind. Susie Chan, who's an ultra runner. Alison, she's one of my favourite coaches on Peloton.
I know Susie Chan.
She's about to do Badwater. I think she's taken us all with her on the Death Valley ultra run of 135 miles. So I've been watching her do the training. We've become friends. She invited me in to run before the studio opened, and yeah, just her state of mind, where she's the coach, she's just never stopped smiling. She just finished one of the Badwater Cup, and at 50 miles in, at a personal record at 48 nearly, she was still smiling. Looked like she was just about to go on a night out. I don't look like that when I come in off her, but I just looked at her and thought, Susie, how on earth are you still grinning your head off after running 50 miles around Cape Fear? But she's just one of those people. She's incredibly uplifting. She got into running late in her life, a bit, I think I did later on in life, and you know, she just smiles her way through everything. And I think what we've all said about surround yourself with positive people, because if you're with negative people, they call them, Jocelyn Thompson Rules, a very great coach as well, she calls them drains. Be careful of the drains in your life. Of, you know, she calls people 3 types. You've got the positive uplifting people, you've got the neutral people who you just bump along with each other, and then you've got the drains. And they all say be careful of being aware of who the drains are in your life and surround yourself with those positive people. So yeah, I just think exercise is key, and get some sleep, which is helped by good exercise. Switch off the news would be my other thing as well. In the pandemic, I just thought, I've had enough now. I can't keep listening to this every day, and it was affecting us all. I think it was making people feel nervous. So I took a view of, I look at the headlines, I keep an eye on the important business bits, but the other stuff, I tend to dial it back and think I don't need to hear all the doom and gloom.
Yeah, good approach. What about you, Hannah? You've left the services now, so what, you can just lounge around and never have to exercise again?
I'm a very keen runner. I'm with my people here. I'm on a program at the moment to get down to sub 20-minute 5k, and it's just that barrier is proving quite tricky at 37. I think my PB is like 20 minutes and 4 seconds. So this is really tedious running chat, sorry, but it's just interesting that we're all business people and we all love running. Crucial, absolutely crucial to my mental health. If I don't run, I also play hockey. And if I don't do those things, they're so mindful. They take me out of the business and I'm concentrating on that hockey ball, my feet, you know, the interval, whatever I'm doing for that amount of time. And I finish, and I've been so in my flow and so engrossed with it, I come out and think, oh, I wasn't worrying about my kids or the business or whatever. So necessary, because I was listening to a podcast on this. It was about neurological mapping, and when we give our brain a break, how much more creative we can be, sort of the different cortexes that start sparking, and it literally gives our brain sort of food to be innovative, to be creative. And if we're not, as we've discussed today, innovative and creative, how are we going to get through the next pandemic, the next recession? So it makes really good business sense to take these breaks and you know, treat your brain like the incredible organ that it is. And also, I love books. I really, really love books. And so one of my favorites at the moment is Effortless. This is from the library by Greg. Is it McCowan? This chap, McEwen. Thank you. I need a book about how to pronounce things. I might just go and read it, because I can't. I'm rubbish at summing up books. Another one I'm reading at the moment by Daniel Pink, some of you may be aware of him, The Power of Regret, which is really helping me, because you know, when you're in bed at night and it's sort of, I don't know, 11, and you think, oh, why did I say that, or why did I do that? And it's making yourself uncomfortable means that you're growing and moving forwards, essentially. Just a brilliant book for just confidence. And then my absolute favorite book ever, and the one I really wanted to recommend specifically for this webinar, is a book called Grit by Angela Duckworth. If you are starting a business or you're on that journey, go and read it. It was a game changer for me and my self-confidence. I don't want to spoil it, but essentially anyone can do anything. And she backs it up with science and case studies. And you finish reading the book and you're like, right, that's it. I can achieve anything I work hard at. So yeah, those are my tips. I'm really passionate about well-being, to be honest. It's something I'm really into.
Well, that's an inspiring message. Fantastic. That's a great way to kind of wrap us up for the day. Eye-opening, uplifting, brilliant. So time has kind of beaten us here, so I want to sort of bring it to a close. But I just want to, just before we go, I just want to ask do a quick straw poll about what people think is going to be their biggest single challenge over the next 12 months. So you can have a look at the Q&A there. Cost control, recruiting talent, retaining staff, spotting, identifying new opportunities, investing in technology, or anything else. So just give us a sort of sense of that. While you're doing that, I will ask you one last favor. When we finish this webinar, a little QR code will flash up on the screen. If you could scan that and just answer a couple of quick questions, that will help us at the British Business Bank to understand how these events are going, how they're received, how we can improve them. So it's great to get that feedback from you guys. It literally takes about 10 seconds, I think. So if you could do that, that would be great. Our poll is looking as though cost control is going to be the big one. That's leading the way, alongside identifying new opportunities, spotting those new markets, alongside recruiting talent as well. So that's brilliant. Thank you very much for that feedback. Thank you very much to everyone for joining us. Thank you to everyone who watched. And most specifically, particularly, thank you very much to our participants, our panelists, who have taken the time out to spend time with us today. I know you guys are all very busy. It's fantastic for us at the bank to understand what you guys are going through so we can help improve our offering. So thank you very much for that. Thank you all for watching. There will be other event schedules, so we will be in touch. But for the time being, on behalf of all the panelists and the British Business Bank, thank you very much and goodbye.